Okay. I think that the time is running down, but it's
Yep.
time for us to do our Bury the Lead segment. I think that 2 weeks ago you went first, so I think this time I'll go first.
Yeah, it's your turn for Bury the Lead, where we deliver our hottest takes in the last 5 minutes of our Zoom call. So here, Abby is.
Okay, so this week's topic for me is I'm going to talk about how I am in favor of screens being banned in schools. I think that this legislature is something that like both the blue and the red is getting along with. As of March, there are more than a dozen states that have decided to sign and pass some bills, such as California and Florida, who obviously are both very opposite sides of the spectrum. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I had recently listened to Ezra Klein's podcast where he interviewed Jonathan Haidt. I don't know if I pronounced his last name right,
Mm.
but the title is Our Kids Are the Least Flourishing Generation We Know of. And I 1000% agree with this. If you look at a lot of the Gen Z or younger Gen Z and Gen Alpha, their socialization skills have been greatly impacted by screens, but also by COVID. And I just think that we're stacking the odds against them. Personally, I went to a school with no phones allowed ever. And I think that that is one of the few things that my very strict Catholic schools have done right. I didn't think that having more screens was a good thing. And you could say that we're not allowed to regulate people, but I think it's different when it comes to students, when it comes to children. This is our youth, and we're allowed to, as like private institutions or as states now are doing regulate their screen intake, especially when it's impacting their anxiety and their level of being able to interact with one another. I've heard horror stories about how people don't know how to make kids, not people, actually people too, but don't know how to make friends anymore. So they're only talking to AI, then having to pay all this money for AI, and that's a whole other thing. I don't,
Oh, that's
that's such an
terrible.
ethical issue with AI. I like in this interview they talked about how they were scared about this too, and just like with the rise of AI in a phone-based childhood, these kids just aren't getting the socialization that they need. And you could say that banning phones won't do them any good, that they'll find a way around it. But I think that any restriction is a good start, especially if you come about it in a way where it's like, we're doing this for your benefit to help you. We want you to be able to talk in cafeterias. It's so sad when I go to the mall and I see a bunch of kids out and all they're doing is sitting around in a circle scrolling on TikTok together. Like I'm like, why aren't you guys conversing? Why are like the slang of screenager is so real, but it's so mentally effective. Like I don't like it. Anyways, I'm done.
No, that's great. That was awesome. Great job this week. This week, I'm going to be talking about mental illness and diagnoses in particular, and the way that I feel like it's kind of turned into this thing where people are using their diagnoses as an excuse rather than something that they can use to benefit or help them in some way. There's a really great person on Instagram. Her handle is Raquel, the capacity expert, and I've been following her. She's been talking about how people are sort of using mental health now as a way of excusing or like justifying their behavior as opposed to motivation to be better. That really hit home with me. I've been thinking a lot about, particularly, people talk about Elon Musk having Asperger's, and they kind of use that as like justification for like why he's awkward or why he's disagreeable or why he can't get along with anyone. And they'll like say it, but in the same breath say like, but look how successful he is. And I'm like, to me, are you really successful if everyone around you finds you disagreeable and you always are having falling outs with people that like implode catastrophically? I think that we shouldn't be labeling people with illness or mental disorders to give them a pass, but we should be using it as a way to say, okay, here's the breakdown of the symptomatology of your disorder. How can we lessen that and actively make it so that you're more effective in the world in general, in a holistic way?
Mm.
Another example being that Brian Kohlberger, who's on trial for the murder of the Idaho students, they say that he has autism spectrum disorder, and they're trying to kind of use that as justification for like, well, he shouldn't be put to death because he has this diagnosis. I don't think he should be put to death because I don't like the death penalty, but I think like using a diagnosis as a way of kind of like getting yourself out of a tough spot, that really just bothers me on every single level. Like I said, I think we shouldn't glorify mental illness. We shouldn't try to like make everything into a trauma, or we shouldn't like be falling back on diagnoses, we should be using it as an incentive and a framework for how to actually improve our lives by lessening symptomatology.